Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try, something is always missing? You put in the effort, make the plans, chase the dreams, and still, there's a restlessness inside. It's like pouring water into a cracked jar. No matter how much you pour, it never fills up. Could it be that the reason for the emptiness is not because you need to do more, be more, have more, but because something, or rather someone, is missing from the foundation of your life? See, we live in a culture that tells us to put ourselves first, our goals, our success, our comfort. We are trained to believe that fulfillment comes from what we accomplish, what we own, or how others perceive us. But let me tell you something, nothing in this world can satisfy a soul that was created to be filled by God alone. When you put Him first, everything shifts. Your perspective, your decisions, your relationships, your very sense of peace and purpose, they all take on new meaning. And I'm not just talking about adding a little prayer here and there or reading a verse once in a while. I'm talking about truly making Him the priority, letting Him be the center of every aspect of your life. When that happens, things change. The chaos that once ruled your heart begins to settle. The confusion that clouded your mind starts to clear. The weight of trying to figure everything out on your own is lifted, because now you're walking in alignment with the one who holds it all together. But here's the challenge, putting God first isn't just a nice idea, it's a choice. A daily decision to trust Him, seek Him, and obey Him even when it doesn't make sense. It means surrendering your will to His, even when you're not sure where He's leading. It means prioritizing time in His presence, not as an afterthought, but as the foundation for everything else. And when you do, get ready to see doors open that you could never have forced open on your own. Get ready to experience peace in the middle of storms that should have overwhelmed you. Get ready to walk in a purpose that is bigger than anything you could have imagined. Because when you put God first, you don't have to beg for blessings, they follow you. You don't have to chase opportunities, they find you. You don't have to fear the future. You walk into it with confidence, knowing that the one who created you is the one guiding you. So if you're tired of striving, tired of feeling stuck, tired of wondering if there's more to life than this there is, and it starts with one decision to put God first. When God is given first place in our lives, everything else begins to align in ways we could never accomplish on our own. We often struggle to balance all the demands pulling at us, our jobs, families, relationships, finances, dreams, and responsibilities. The world tells us to prioritize success, status, or personal comfort, but the truth is, nothing works as it should when God is not at the center. The order in which we place God in our lives determines the flow of everything else. It's not just about acknowledging Him, but about actively seeking Him before anything or anyone else. When we do, we begin to experience a divine order that brings clarity to our decisions, peace to our hearts, and direction to our steps. There's a supernatural shift that happens when we move from fitting God into our schedules to building our schedules around Him. So often we chase after things we think will complete us. We strive to achieve success in our careers, believing that if we can just reach a certain level, we will finally feel secure. We pour ourselves into relationships, hoping they will fill the void inside. We chase money, influence, or recognition, thinking that once we have enough, we will finally be content. But no matter how much we gain, something always feels out of place. That's because we were never designed to be satisfied by these things alone. When God is first, we no longer live under the weight of constant striving. Instead of chasing success, we allow Him to guide us into the right opportunities. Instead of being consumed by worry, we experience His peace, knowing that He holds our future. Instead of relying on our own limited wisdom, we lean into His infinite understanding. Life has a way of pulling us in multiple directions, making it easy to drift away from God without even realizing it. The distractions are subtle and overloaded schedule, endless responsibilities, the temptation to handle everything ourselves. Before we know it, our time with God becomes something we squeeze in when it's convenient rather than the foundation of our lives. But the moment we shift our priorities back to Him, everything changes. Seeking God first does not mean neglecting our responsibilities or ignoring our dreams. It means inviting Him into every area of our lives. It means beginning each day in His presence, seeking His wisdom before making decisions, and allowing His word to shape our thoughts and actions. When He is first, we begin to see our lives through His perspective. And suddenly, what once seemed confusing or overwhelming starts to make sense. Obedience to God is not just about following rules, it's about positioning ourselves in the flow of His blessings. There are things He wants to release in our lives, doors He wants to open, and breakthroughs He wants to bring, but they require us to be in alignment with Him. When we put Him first, we step into His divine order, where things begin to work together for our good in ways we could never orchestrate on our own. Many times we wonder why things feel chaotic, why we lack peace, or why we feel disconnected from our purpose. The answer often lies in our priorities. Have we truly placed God above everything else? Have we sought His will before making decisions? Have we given Him our first and best, or does He only get what's left over? When we shift our focus back to Him, we find that He has been waiting all along, ready to lead us into the life He has prepared for us. There is an ease that comes with putting God first. It doesn't mean life will always be easy, but it does mean that we will no longer carry burdens we were never meant to bear alone. When He is at the center, everything else falls into its proper place, and we begin to walk in the peace, provision, and purpose that only He can provide. True peace and fulfillment do not come from external achievements, relationships, or material success. They come from prioritizing God above all else. People spend their lives searching for meaning, trying to fill an internal void with things that were never designed to satisfy the soul. The world teaches us that happiness is found in status, wealth, or recognition. But time and time again, we see people who have everything, yet still feel empty. That's because nothing in this world can replace the role of God in our lives. The human heart was created to be in relationship with Him. When that relationship is neglected, there is an undeniable sense of restlessness. No matter how much we try to ignore it, suppress it, or distract ourselves from it, that emptiness remains. We attempt to fill it with work, entertainment, relationships, or even good things like family and personal achievements, but nothing truly satisfies. That void can only be filled when God is at the center, when our lives revolve around seeking Him, knowing Him, and aligning ourselves with His will. Peace is not found in circumstances, but in the presence of God. There are people who seem to have everything, yet are anxious and dissatisfied, while others have very little, but radiate a deep sense of peace. The difference is where they have placed their trust. When God is the source of our fulfillment, our joy is not dependent on situations or people. We are no longer swayed by every challenge, disappointment, or delay. Our hearts remain steady because we know that He is in control. When we prioritize God, we stop chasing temporary things to fill a permanent need. Many spend years believing that if they can just achieve a certain goal, make a certain amount of money, or gain approval from the right people, they will finally be content. But as soon as one thing is accomplished, another desire takes its place, leaving them in a never-ending cycle of pursuit without true satisfaction. God never intended for us to live that way. He wants us to rest in the assurance that He alone is enough. There is a difference between temporary happiness and lasting fulfillment. Happiness is based on circumstances. It comes and goes depending on what is happening around us. But fulfillment in God is unshakable. It remains steady even in the face of trials because it is rooted in something deeper than external conditions. That is why people who truly put God first can walk through storms with peace, knowing that their foundation is secure. Prioritizing God does not mean neglecting responsibilities or ignoring personal goals. It means placing Him above everything else, seeking His wisdom, and allowing Him to direct every aspect of our lives. It means looking to Him first instead of relying on our own understanding. When we do, we gain clarity. Decisions become easier because we are no longer driven by fear, insecurity, or the pressure to prove ourselves. We walk in confidence, knowing that we are exactly where we are meant to be. Many people struggle with an underlying sense of discontentment, always feeling like something is missing. They try to fill the gap with busyness, relationships, or success, yet the longing remains. That longing is a call back to God, a reminder that only He can satisfy the deepest desires of the heart. Until He takes first place, there will always be a sense of incompleteness, no matter what is achieved. Peace comes when we surrender to God, trusting that His ways are higher than ours. Instead of exhausting ourselves trying to control everything, we rest in His promises. Instead of carrying burdens we were never meant to bear, we place them in His hands. The more we focus on Him, the less we are shaken by the ups and downs of life. We no longer live in a constant state of striving because we know that our security is not found in what we do, but in who He is. When God is our priority, everything else falls into place. The things we once thought we needed begin to lose their grip on us. We realize that true fulfillment is not found in what we achieve, but in who we belong to. The peace that comes from living in alignment with Him surpasses anything the world can offer. Putting God first is not a one-time decision, but a daily choice. It requires intentionality, a willingness to surrender, and a heart that consistently seeks Him above all else. Many people start their journey with God filled with passion and commitment, but over time, distractions, responsibilities, and the pressures of life can slowly shift their focus. Before they realize it, their time with God becomes an afterthought, squeezed into the margins of a busy schedule rather than being the foundation of their lives. True transformation happens when seeking God becomes a lifestyle rather than an occasional action. It is easy to say that God is first, but our daily choices reveal where our priorities truly lie. The way we spend our time, the things we allow to influence us, and the decisions we make all reflect what holds the highest place in our hearts. Choosing God daily means actively making room for Him, not just fitting Him in when it is convenient. One of the greatest challenges in putting God first is the battle against distractions. There is always something demanding attention: work, social media, relationships, financial concerns, or personal ambitions. The enemy does not always try to pull people away from God with obvious temptations. Sometimes he simply fills their lives with so much noise that they unintentionally drift away. Without realizing it, they wake up one day feeling disconnected, wondering why they lack peace, clarity, and direction. That drift does not happen overnight, but gradually, as other things slowly take precedence over time in His presence. A surrendered life requires discipline. It means choosing prayer over procrastination, the Word over worry, and worship over worldly distractions. It means making time for God before checking emails, scrolling through social media, or jumping into a to-do list. It means allowing His voice to be the loudest above opinions, fears, and personal ambitions. When people prioritize Him, they gain the wisdom, strength, and peace needed to navigate everything else in life. Daily surrender is not always easy, but it is always worth it. There will be moments when emotions do not align with faith, when tiredness, doubt, or frustration make it tempting to skip time with God. But consistency is what produces growth. Even when feelings fluctuate, choosing to seek Him anyway builds a firm foundation that cannot be shaken. The days when it feels hardest to pray, read scripture, or spend time in worship are often the days when it is needed the most. Trusting God fully requires releasing control. Many struggle with surrender because they want to know exactly how things will work out before they obey. But faith does not operate on human logic. It requires stepping forward in obedience even when the path is unclear. The more people practice surrender, the more they experience the faithfulness of God, and the easier it becomes to trust Him with every part of life. Putting God first also affects the way decisions are made. Instead of reacting based on emotions, fear, or pressure, decisions are guided by His wisdom. Instead of rushing ahead, there is a pause to seek His direction. When He is the priority, there is no need to force doors open or manipulate situations to work in a certain way. His timing and plan are always better than anything people could orchestrate on their own. A life that is fully surrendered to God is a life that walks in peace. The burden of figuring everything out alone is lifted because there is confidence in His leading. Anxiety is replaced with trust. Striving is replaced with rest. And uncertainty is replaced with the assurance that He is in control. No matter what happens externally, there is an unshakable security in knowing that God is guiding each step. Every day presents a choice: to seek God first or to let the cares of life take over. Choosing Him daily is what transforms faith from something occasional to something foundational. The more consistently He is prioritized, the more His presence, wisdom, and direction shape every area of life. Obedience to God is the key that unlocks His divine favor. Many people desire His blessings, His guidance, and His hand upon their lives, but they hesitate when it comes to fully surrendering to His will. True obedience is not about selective submission, choosing which parts of God's instructions to follow while ignoring the rest. It is about wholeheartedly trusting that His way is always better, even when it does not make sense. God does not call people to obedience to limit them, but to lead them into greater abundance. Every instruction He gives is for a purpose, even when it is not immediately clear. Sometimes what He asks may seem small, insignificant, or even difficult. But obedience in the small things often sets the stage for greater blessings. Those who are faithful with little will be entrusted with much. When God sees a heart that is willing to obey, He opens doors that no one else can open. Many people struggle with obedience because they want to understand the full picture before taking the first step. They hesitate, waiting for complete clarity, but faith does not work that way. God often requires movement before revelation. He asks for obedience before He reveals what is next. When people step forward in faith, even without knowing all the details, they position themselves to receive what He has already prepared. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. Many people know what God has asked them to do, but they put it off, convincing themselves that they will obey when the timing feels right. But the longer they wait, the harder it becomes. Every moment of hesitation creates room for doubt, fear, and excuses. The enemy thrives in delay, whispering reasons to stay comfortable, to wait for a more convenient time, or to question whether God really meant what He said. But immediate obedience shuts the door to those distractions and moves a person into alignment with God's will. Obedience is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Sometimes God will ask for sacrifice, requiring the release of something familiar, comfortable, or deeply valued. He may ask someone to let go of a relationship, a habit, a career path, or a personal ambition. In those moments, trust is tested. But nothing surrendered to God is ever truly lost. When He asks for something, it is because He has something greater in store. Throughout Scripture, there are countless examples of people who experience supernatural blessings as a result of their obedience. Abraham was asked to leave everything familiar, and his obedience led to a covenant that would bless generations. Moses followed God's command to lead the Israelites, and through his obedience, miracles unfolded. Peter cast his net at Jesus' word, even after catching nothing all night, and he received an overflow of fish. The pattern is clear. Obedience positions people to receive blessings they could never achieve on their own. God's favor does not mean a life without challenges, but it does mean that even in difficulties, there is provision, protection, and divine intervention. When a person walks in obedience, they walk under an open heaven, where opportunities arise that they never had to strive for. Doors open, resources appear, and favor follows in ways that cannot be explained by human effort alone. Partial obedience is still disobedience. It is not enough to follow God's instructions halfway, picking and choosing what is comfortable while disregarding what is difficult. True obedience requires full surrender, trusting that even when His commands seem challenging, they are ultimately for good. When God speaks, He is not asking for negotiation or compromise. He is calling for complete trust. One of the greatest benefits of obedience is the peace that comes with knowing life is aligned with God's will. There's no need to force things to happen, no need to chase after success, and no need to live in constant anxiety about the future. When a person obeys, they can rest in the confidence that God is in control, working everything together for their good. The pressure to make things happen is replaced with the assurance that His plans are unfolding exactly as they should. There will always be moments when obedience requires faith beyond what feels comfortable. There will be times when God's instructions seem illogical, risky, or even impossible. But the reward for obedience is always greater than the cost. The more consistently a person follows God's leading, the more they see His faithfulness in action. Each act of obedience strengthens trust, and over time, a life built on obedience becomes a life overflowing with His favor. Trusting God over fear is the key to walking in divine purpose. Fear has a way of paralyzing people, keeping them stuck in places they were never meant to remain. It whispers doubts, magnifies insecurities, and creates endless reasons why stepping out in faith is too risky. But fear is not from God. It is a tool of the enemy designed to block people from moving into the fullness of what God has called them to do. When faith takes priority over fear, doors open, boldness rises, and a life of purpose begins to unfold. God never intended for His people to live controlled by fear. Throughout Scripture, He repeatedly commands His people to fear not. He does not suggest it, He commands it. That is because fear is one of the greatest hindrances to spiritual growth, obedience, and fulfilling destiny. When fear is allowed to dictate decisions, it limits what God can do in a person's life. Faith, on the other hand, releases His power and invites Him to move in supernatural ways. Walking in purpose requires stepping beyond comfort. Many people feel a deep stirring inside, sensing that God is calling them to something greater, yet they hesitate. They wait for the perfect conditions, for every question to be answered, and for every risk to be eliminated before they move. But faith does not work that way. God rarely provides all the details up front. Instead, He calls people to trust Him step by step. When faith leads the way, provision, wisdom, and direction follow. The enemy knows that fear is one of the most effective ways to keep people from fulfilling their God-given assignments. He will use doubt to make them question their abilities, their qualifications, and even their calling. He will remind them of past failures, convincing them that they are not capable of doing what God has placed in their hearts. But God never calls based on human strength alone. He calls based on his power working through those who are willing to trust him. Faith is not the absence of fear, it is choosing to move forward in spite of it. Courage is not about never feeling afraid, but about refusing to let fear dictate actions. Every great move of God has required people to step forward despite uncertainty. Moses had to confront Pharaoh. David had to face Goliath. Esther had to risk her life for her people. Peter had to step out of the boat. None of them knew exactly how things would turn out, but they chose faith over fear, and God met them in their obedience. Trusting God removes the weight of control. Fear often comes from the desire to have everything figured out, to know every step in advance, and to eliminate risk before taking action. But true faith surrenders control, acknowledging that God sees the full picture, even when human understanding is limited. When people let go of the need to control every outcome, they experience the freedom that comes from fully relying on him. Fear thrives on what ifs. What if I fail? What if people criticize me? What if I make the wrong decision? But faith shifts the perspective. What if God provides? What if he opens the right doors? What if he exceeds every expectation? Instead of dwelling on worst-case scenarios, faith focuses on the promises of God, trusting that he is able to do exceedingly and abundantly more than anything imagined. Stepping into purpose often requires walking into the unknown. Abraham was called to leave everything familiar and go to a land God would show him. He did not have a map, a clear destination, or a detailed plan. He had only a promise. Yet because he trusted God, he became the father of nations. Purpose is not found in comfort zones. It is discovered in the place where faith takes over and dependence on God becomes the only option. Fear will always present reasons to stay where it feels safe. It will highlight every obstacle, every potential failure, and every reason why something seems impossible. But faith silences fear by focusing on who God is. He is the provider, the protector, the way maker, and the one who equips those he calls. When faith leads the way, impossibilities become testimonies, and ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things through his strength. God has placed purpose inside every person, but it can only be fully realized when fear is no longer in control. Faith must be the driving force, the foundation upon which every decision is built. Fear will always try to creep in, but when God is trusted above every doubt, every hesitation, and every uncertainty, the path to purpose becomes clear. Faith does not require knowing the entire journey. It only requires taking the next step, believing that God is already preparing the way.